Hi, this is Catherine, and this is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Granny Green Apple green tea, so I guess apple flavored green tea that I got when I was in California and kind of going to a little shop that was Britishy to make up for not having gone to London. So I thought that would be a perfect tea to drink this week, right? And this is a beautiful cup that I got from the Brahma Tea Museum in London also. But I'm using this today because of the time period when I got it, which was 2003. So that's basically the time period I'm going to mostly be talking about today. And I haven't done a tour of my tea library in a while. And when I say tour, I don't go right up to the shelves and pull everything out because it's just too much production for me. But I thought I'd just show you a couple of things I have at a time. So I am combining two things because they're all related and it's a whole story. So I'm going to tell you the story. So, where is it? Okay, so for years, when I say years, I don't mean a million years, but for quite some time, I knew of the existence of Tea, a magazine. It was a magazine about tea, and it was serious. It wasn't just about, doilies and whatnot, although I'm sure there were some doilies in there, but like actual plantations at the word, tea gardens that they visited, tea shops, anything related to tea. But it was very, like, almost professional in a way, like almost like a professional magazine, but also for the everyday person who happens to love tea, if that makes sense. So I guess when I started seeing it, I was kind of strapped for cash and probably didn't want to just pick up a magazine that, let me see, in the newsstands in those days was $5, which was a lot, honestly, in the turn of the century time period. I can't believe I'm saying turn of the century, but one day I was in Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble usually, well, it depends on the Barnes & Noble you go to, but cat just rubbed against me. Now I got cat hair on me. This is great. But a lot of the Barnes & Noble shops in Manhattan have decent magazine sections, periodicals, etc. Some are better than others. I think I was in one that doesn't exist anymore, but there was one, I think, in Chelsea area. It was a really nice one, but, I guess not everything is sustainable. And I bought this one. I think it's the first one I actually bought. Angela Lansbury, which, speaking of tea and mystery. But she's obviously kind of well known nowadays to the younger generations as Mrs. Potts, I guess. Is that the name? I haven't watched Beauty and the Beast in a while, but she was a teapot. She was the voice of the teapot. So anyway, this was her almost 20 years ago. So I bought that one, and I think I ended up I definitely ended up subscribing to the magazine because I had finally had a job. It wasn't like an amazing job. I didn't really like it, but it was a job, Sometimes you just have to be happy with having a job. So that was one of the things that kept me going, was having things like a tea magazine to subscribe to. And so I subscribed to it, and it's a beautiful magazine. This is probably one of my favorite ones, and I'll probably talk about it a little more later because it's, tea grows in England, English tea rooms. Walker's Shortbread has a recipe for masala chai, which also I love very much. And I just was obsessed with this magazine, and there was always a little article, at least one, from Pearl Dexter, who was the editor for the longest time of the magazine. And, she traveled all around to different places, different countries, and so I knew her name. And one day in 2003, in the spring of 2003, right before I went back to London, I remember that especially because during that time, I remember people were actually saying to me, "Are you sure you should travel with SARS and everything?" And I was like, please, how am I not going to travel because of some disease? But nowadays, things change. I gotta stop talking about that. But I think it's on everyone's mind, so it's going to come back every once in a while. I try to flip through social media. I want to see how long I go without finding something about the whole COVID situation, coronavirus, and maybe it's within 5 seconds of scrolling that I'll find something. So, it's just unavoidable. But thankfully back then, because I was at a job that I really didn't like, and I remember I was actually trying to find jobs related to tea, and it didn't work out. I had certain things that I looked into, and it just didn't work. And I was a little sad about that, and I had the internet, but when When I say I had the internet, I didn't at my job because the place I worked for was paranoid and they didn't have any internet access except for one computer in the basement. Yeah, it was a weird situation. I mean, it was around from 2002 to 2004 I had this job, and in those days you could almost run a business without everybody having. It was a slightly different time. So, again, a little bit of the blahs in my life, and but I was looking very much forward to going to the UK, and I also went to Ireland that year. It's like the only time I went to Ireland. Very nice trip. I also met Brian May. Did I mention that? From Queen? Oh my goodness. So yeah, good memories. And I was at a friend's house, and I had my cell phone with me. I think this is even before I had text messaging, but I was at a friend's house, and I got a call from my dad, who was still alive, and he had gotten a call on the home phone. And he said, "You got a call. I spoke to a Pearl Dexter called." And I was like, "What?" The editor. Nowadays, I don't know. There's kind of things like you could almost get in touch with editors and stuff. You could talk to people online, or whatever. But back then, like I said, the only internet I had was this dial-up at home that was so slow that I hardly ever visited it, except for ordering things from Lush, maybe, and ordering books online sometimes, even then. But not too much. Otherwise, checking an email here and there. Didn't have Facebook yet, etc. And he said, yeah, she wanted to let you know about an event that if you wanted to come, she's promoting a book. So I don't remember if I called her back or if I called the reservations. I don't know what I did. Like, I literally don't remember. It's been that long. I almost feel like I talked to her, but maybe not. Yeah, that's weird. I should check my diaries. I think at that time I was actually writing about things again. But either way, it turned out there was a little event again at the St. Regis. Is that what it's called? I should know because I work not far from there. The St. Regis on Fifth Avenue in the 50s in Manhattan. And, back then I was working in Queens. I almost never went to Manhattan, except for when I went to Barnes & Noble or something, or visited my sister when she was working in Manhattan. But, I mean, so to me, I use that excuse to get over there anyway. And it was an afternoon tea in their tea room. It was beautiful, by the way, to promote a book she had written. And it was the book had come out a little earlier, but it was a book about tea and presidential families. Tea with presidential families. See, here it is. It's got a little indentation, a little paper in there. But it's by Beulah, my goodness, Munshauer, I don't know, and Pearl Dexter. So it's a picture of looks like all the first ladies, like some kind of Sergeant Pepper of first ladies, And in the back is a nice picture of a wintry day in front of the White House. And if you know me, you know that even though I like history, and I was definitely well into my years of reading obsessively about British history and some French, I remember around that time reading a book about Madame de Pompadour, and Marie Antoinette and those kind of peoples, that time period-ish, those generations. But American stuff, like I said, the occasional thing, because it was around, like, I think the bicentennial of the whole Lewis and Clark expedition. Thomas Jefferson was all over the place, and people talking about. So I might have heard a little bit of stuff, but not that much. And so I was not really that interested in presidents. I had met a president at this point. I met Bill Clinton quite randomly, and since then, I've actually seen quite a few of the presidents. I've seen Obama briefly, and, well, before he was president, I saw Donald Trump because he was signing at a Barnes & Noble that my sister and I were at. I didn't meet him, But anyway, I don't want to talk about politics. I'm not interested in politics, but I am interested in history, and I'm loving tea, and I always have. So this, of course, was a book that I was totally okay with getting a hold of. And it looks like, when I look at the price inside, it looks like it was originally $49 and $65 in Canada. Goodness sakes, Canadians. How do you do it? I know you have some nice bookshops. Actually, this was the same month. No, well, yeah, it was the same month I went back to Canada as well for the third time. Montreal was a great trip. They had a bookshop called Chapters. I think they're related to another place now, Indigo or something. They're all together, but I haven't been because it's been that long since I've been to Canada. But we're talking about America right now. I mean, when I say America, United States. I'm so, guys, don't jump on me when you hear me say things that are slightly incorrect, because you're going to hear some more slightly incorrect things coming up. So we went to this afternoon tea. It was I think it was like a champagne afternoon tea at this beautiful place with my older sister Pam. And it was so lovely. We dressed up, not frilly, but we dressed up nicely. I wore a nice jacket with a nice skirt and not heels, but like, for me, a heel with like a little chunky thing. And it just it felt cool, you know? Because I've been to a lot of tea places, but tea in hotels will always feel just that much more swanky. I don't know. It's just a great experience. And she signed it. It says, "For Catherine, may this book be a great blessing with a spot of tea. Warmest regards, Pearl, 5303. So, can't forget when that was. That was May 3rd, 2003. So that's really nice to have that memory. I always remember it's May 2003, but just that it's always going to stick in my head. So, yeah, there was a little bit of a talk, I remember. And again, the tea and getting to meet her and having a little conversation about tea. I know my sister said I sounded a little bit nervous, but that's how I am. I know I probably even sound nervous here sometimes because I'm an anxious person, but it's much different when someone meets me in person. I'm not always, I've worked on it, but I'm not always as polished, and I'm not always as well-spoken as I'd like to be. But it didn't matter because it was just meeting someone and having an autograph and having lovely afternoon tea. The food, I remember I had Darjeeling because when I go out for afternoon tea, I almost always have their Darjeeling because unless it's a place that I've been to a lot and I'm in the mood for something else. Like Alice's Teacup, awesome. I often get the rooibos chai because it's just so good. So whenever they reopen, it'd be nice to visit them again. It's so amazing how many places are closed right now. It's weird. But okay, we're looking back. So this is 2003. That was so nice. So this was related to the tea magazine. And it is a great book. It actually is, well, it's 1999. So it ends with the Clinton presidency. Way back in the day. And every president had something tea related. Even if they weren't big tea drinkers, they may have had a nice tea set or something. Kennedy, was it Kennedy, I think? His grandmother or someone, grandmother, knew Thomas Lipton. I mean, weird, right? I mean, because when we think about American history, we always think of like the Boston Tea Party and how, okay, we're going to protest tea and dump it in the harbor, and we're not going to drink tea, we're going to be coffee people. But tea has always found its way into history in every country. So there it is. Oh yeah, see? Once again, a little guide, a little Sgt. Pepper guide. And I haven't read this in a long time, but you learn a little bit about every president and their wives, because that's actually important. It's about their families, not just the president themselves. Sometimes it was the first lady that was more into tea than the president. Just how it is. So, going back, that was a wonderful experience. It was a great time. I didn't take any pictures. Nowadays, they would be all over the place. You splashed all over Instagram and etc. But this was when I'm not even sure if there was a camera on my phone. It was my first cell phone, I think, that I had. Right before I got my second one, which had texting, regular texting and a camera phone. But yeah, this is, again, it's weird because it's not that long ago, but it does seem like a million years ago when you think about things like that. So, again, I subscribed to the tea magazine for many years, alongside Victoria whenever I could, and it's just beautiful. This particular, again, this was my favorite one, that came out in the winter of 2006, which is a year I really needed a lot of comfort like this. And they even had like book reviews that were like books about tea and everything, and just resources and stuff. I mean, you can't go wrong. So I wrote a letter to the editor because I really liked that one. And the spring 2006 tea magazine had the letter. And I'm going to read it to you, of course, because, by the way, there are some grammatical errors in here, maybe. I think so. But anyway, I'm going to read this, what I wrote in here. Dear T. It's like I'm writing to the cup, right? Dear T, I can't tell you how glad I am to have renewed my subscription in time for the winter 2006 issue. Before I even opened to the first page, it felt as if it were tailor-made for me. Was? The history and future of Serendipity held particular interest as they are located close to my home in Astoria. just the next town over from Long Island City. I've always admired the quality of their tea and the dedicated passion of its founders. The article on white tea was informative and definitive. Mr. Rao's masala chai, and cardamom memories provided a helpful recipe for chai, which I probably never used. As a raving Anglophile, things don't change, I was especially excited about tea grows in England, Tregnathan, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's Cornwall, tea estate. How groundbreaking! I've heard wonderful things about Cornwall's climate, but never thought I'd see the day when estate tea would successfully grow in England. Thank you so much for informing your fellow tea lovers about this fascinating development. Right about now, I feel like relaxing with a cup of masala chai, heavy on the cinnamon, and anyway, I just lost my cat sitting in that ear, so I was probably thinking of that. And some hearty Walker's shortbread while pouring through Tea Magazine one more time. Thanks again, Catherine Tom, Astoria, New York. It sounds like it sounds like me, but it doesn't exactly sound like me, if that makes sense. This was around the time when I had a blog, so, early days. So even so, I wasn't used to seeing my name in print unless it was like when I was in school or whatever. So that was a bit of a thrill, and my dad was still alive. He died that year, but he was still alive, and he was very excited about it. I remember him calling my aunt. So that was a fun time. So Tea Magazine, I don't think exists anymore because I remember it went, Pearl Dexter stopped being the editor, and then someone else took over, and then eventually I think it just went online. I don't know. So that, I guess, is non-existent anymore, and it's okay, but it's kind of sad. But I don't know if this book can be found anywhere, so it's kind of a nice little historical treasure for me. I don't know. And so, and I love tea and I love history. So this has been my little brief library tour, and there shall be more to come. Let me know if you guys ever read Tea Magazine, or if you ever saw this book, or if you were drinking tea back in 2003. This is Catherine, Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea-filled day. Goodbye.